She said, "I'm afraid of you." The cowboy stepped back and made a promise that changed her life. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the dusty plains of the outer colony. Alara stood near the edge of the settlement, her hair blowing lightly in the warm breeze. The colony had grown slowly over the past 10 years, built by humans who wanted to create a home far from Earth. The domed buildings, metal walkways, and solar panels all glinted in the sunlight, but beyond them stretched endless dry land, dotted with strange rock formations and alien plants. It was beautiful in a quiet, lonely way, but it was also dangerous if one didn't respect the land. Ilara adjusted her bag on her shoulder, feeling a little nervous. She had been out here to study the local plant life, to find ways to make the soil richer for farming, but today felt different. She sensed someone watching her. She turned sharply. A tall figure appeared on the ridge a little way off. He was dressed in a long, worn coat, dusty boots, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face. He moved with calm confidence, each step measured, deliberate. Ilara froze, her heart beat faster. She had heard stories about the cowboy, the mysterious figure who roamed the outskirts of the colony. Nobody knew where he came from. Some said he had been part of the original terraforming teams. Others whispered that he had lived here longer than the colony itself. Whatever the truth, he had a reputation, a man who could survive anything, who understood the land better than anyone. Ilara took a small step back. I'm afraid of you," she said before she could stop herself. The words felt strange as soon as they left her mouth. She didn't know why she admitted it, but somehow it felt honest. The cowboy stopped in his tracks. For a moment he said nothing. Then he slowly lifted the brim of his hat, revealing a calm face with weathered lines, sharp eyes, and a hint of a smile. "Afraid," he repeated softly. "You don't need to be afraid." Ilara's brow furrowed. "But you're so different, I've heard stories." He chuckled, low and warm, not mocking her but gentle. "Stories are not who we are. They are what people say when they don't know the truth." Ilara felt a strange sense of relief, though she wasn't sure why. His presence was both intimidating and comforting at the same time. She took a hesitant step forward. "Then, what should I do? How do I even—" "Stop worrying," he interrupted. His voice was soft but firm. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. Not you, not the colony. I'm here because I can help. But first," he paused, scanning the horizon with eyes that seemed to see things she could not. "You need to trust that not everything unknown is dangerous." Ilara swallowed. "Trust you?" The cowboy nodded. "Yes, trust me. I will not let anything happen to you while I am near, and I promise you have nothing to fear from me." It was strange, the way he said it, like a quiet truth that didn't need proving. Ilara wanted to believe him, but old fears lingered. Still, there was something about him that made her hesitate, something that whispered she could. "Okay," she said finally, her voice trembling. I will try." The cowboy tipped his hat slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement, not of superiority. "Good, that is all I ask for now." "Try." For a while they just stood there, watching the sun lower in the sky. The alien landscape shimmered in oranges and pinks, the rocks casting long, twisting shadows. A few birds, not like any on Earth, flew across the horizon, calling out in strange songs. Ilara felt her fear slowly soften into curiosity. "I need to collect samples," she said, pointing to her equipment bag. "The soil here is strange and some plants are unusual. I can't figure them out by myself." The cowboy nodded. "Then we'll go together. I know the land. You know the science. We will find the answers faster together." Ilara hesitated. She had never worked with anyone like him before. Most people in the colony relied heavily on technology and machines. But this man, he seemed to understand the world in a way no machine could. There was a wisdom in him that made her feel both cautious and eager. As they walked toward the rocky plains, the cowboy moved with an easy rhythm, scanning the ground and air for signs of danger or opportunity. Ilara tried to keep up, fumbling with her bag, making careful notes in her small tablet. She noticed how he examined the plants, touched the soil, and listened to the subtle sounds of the wind and rocks. "Why do you move like that?" she asked, curiosity overcoming fear. "Like you know everything," he smiled faintly. "I don't know everything, but I know how to notice. That is enough most of the time. You will learn too if you open your eyes." Alara looked at him and realized that he wasn't just a man. He was an example of what humans could become when they truly observed, truly adapted. He made the strange, alien world seem understandable. Somehow he made her believe that humans didn't just survive, they could thrive, even here. They reached a small outcrop of rocks where the soil was rich and the plants grew in odd, spiral patterns. Alara knelt down, taking samples carefully. She glanced at the cowboy who was already studying a nearby rock formation with sharp focus. "You see patterns," she said slowly, "even in the rocks." He nodded. "Everything has a pattern. Humans forget this when they rely too much on machines. But patterns are the language of the world. Learn to read them, and you understand how life moves." Alara felt a thrill of excitement. She had studied patterns in her lab, in data charts and simulations, but here patterns were alive, breathing and shifting with the wind. And he was teaching her to see them not just as data but as living truths. Hours passed. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky with deep purples and reds. They gathered samples, recorded observations, and even shared small stories about their lives. The cowboy didn't speak of his past much, only giving glimpses. A place he called home once, lessons learned on barren planets, nights spent under alien stars. "You've lived a long time," Alara said finally, her voice soft. "How do you stay calm, always?" He looked at her, his eyes reflecting the last light of the day. "Because fear is only useful when it teaches you. It is not useful when it controls you. You will learn this too, trust me. You will." Alara felt a warmth in her chest. Somehow the man who had once made her afraid had begun to make her feel brave. She realized that his promise, to show her she had nothing to fear, wasn't just words. It was a lesson, a guide. And for the first time since arriving on this planet, she felt a small flicker of hope that humans, with all their curiosity and courage, could truly belong here. As the sky darkened and stars began to sparkle above, they made their way back to the colony. The lights of the settlement glimmered like tiny beacons, and the wind carried the soft hum of machinery mixed with alien sounds. Alara glanced at the cowboy. "I thank you," she said, "for being patient, for showing me this." He tipped his hat again, a quiet gesture that spoke more than words. "We are only beginning, Alara. Tomorrow you will see more, and I will be here." She smiled, feeling less afraid than ever before. For the first time, she understood what it meant to trust, to step beyond fear, and to embrace the unknown. And deep inside, she knew that meeting this strange, quiet cowboy was the start of something that could change not just her life, but the life of the entire colony. The night settled over the plains, calm and vast. Somewhere beyond the hills, the wind whispered through alien grass and rock. And under the wide expanse of stars, a scientist and a cowboy walked side by side, beginning a journey neither of them could yet imagine, but one that promised hope, discovery, and the enduring spirit of humanity. The morning light spilled across the colony, soft and golden. Alara woke early, her mind buzzing with thoughts from the previous day. She could still feel the calm presence of the cowboy walking beside her on the plains, teaching her to read the land, to see its patterns. She realized she had never met anyone like him. Most people in the colony relied on machines and instruments to solve problems. But he relied on observation, intuition, and patience. She packed her equipment carefully, making sure each sample container, notebook, and tool was ready for the day. Today, she was to lead an expedition to repair a small terraforming node on the outskirts of the settlement. The node was responsible for distributing water to the newly planted crops, and its malfunction could slow the colony's growth. She had studied the schematics countless times, but even she admitted that the problem was complex. As she stepped outside, she saw the cowboy waiting near the edge of the colony. He leaned against a rock, the wide-brimmed hat shading his eyes, and he watched the sunrise. His coat flapped lightly in the breeze. When he saw her, he gave a small nod. "Ready?" he asked in his calm, steady voice. Ilara smiled nervously. "I think so." "Good," he said. "Then let's go. There is much to learn and little time to waste." They began their walk across the plains. The path was uneven, covered in strange, red-tinted soil and dotted with alien plants. Some of the plants grew in spirals, others in clusters that glowed faintly in the morning light. Ilara carried her tablet, making notes and sketches, while the cowboy moved with ease, stepping over rocks and scanning the horizon. "You see these plants?" he said suddenly, pointing to a cluster of tall, thin stems. "Many people would ignore them. They are not dangerous, but they hold information. Watch how they lean, how they curve toward the sun. They tell you about the soil and the wind patterns. You can use that knowledge." Ilara knelt beside the plants, examining their delicate structure. "So they are like indicators?" she asked. "Yes," the cowboy said. "Everything here is connected. Learn to read the signs and you will not need fear. You will only need knowledge." As they walked further, they reached a small ridge overlooking the broken terraforming node. It stood half-buried in the soil, its panels flickering weakly. The machinery was silent in parts, humming faintly in others. Ilara frowned. She had studied this node from the comfort of the lab, but seeing it here in the open air made the problem feel much larger. "I don't know if I can fix this alone," she admitted. "You are not alone," the cowboy said. "I am here to help, but not by doing it for you. I will guide you. Humans are strongest when they use their minds, not their hands alone." Ilara felt a spark of determination. She had feared failure, but now, with him beside her, she felt capable. Together, they examined the panels, the water lines, and the control circuits. The cowboy showed her how to observe small details: the angle of a pipe, the way the sunlight reflected off the surface, even the sound of water moving through the tubes. Hours passed as they worked side by side. Ilara tried different approaches, testing sensors, calibrating valves, and reading data on her tablet. The cowboy rarely touched the controls himself. Instead, he offered advice. "Try adjusting the flow here, notice the angle of the panel, listen to the rhythm of the water." At first, Ilara was frustrated. She wanted him to just fix it, to make the problem disappear. But slowly, she began to understand his method. He was teaching her to think like the land itself, to understand the balance between human technology and natural forces. During a short break, they sat on the ridge, watching the strange horizon. The sky was pale blue, and distant clouds swirled in patterns that reminded Ilara of the spiraling plants below. "You make it seem simple," she said, "but it's complicated." "Nothing is simple or complicated," the cowboy said. "It is only what you understand. The more you observe, the simpler it becomes." Ilara thought about his words. She realized he was right. She had been so focused on the machines, the data, and the rules that she had forgotten to simply look, listen, and understand. And now, for the first time, she felt the land beginning to make sense. As the sun climbed higher, a sudden challenge appeared. A small section of the water line had collapsed under the weight of shifting soil. The water pressure had dropped, and the plants nearby were beginning to wilt. Ilara's heart raced. This was exactly the kind of failure she had feared. "Stay calm," the cowboy said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Panic does not fix anything. Think." Ilara took a deep breath. She studied the broken line, tracing the flow of water in her mind. Then she remembered the patterns he had taught her to notice: the direction of the soil, the slope of the land, the way nearby plants leaned toward water. Slowly, she devised a plan. She would reroute the water through an alternate path using temporary tubing, letting the plants survive while she repaired the main line. With his guidance, she carefully placed the temporary tubes, adjusted the valves, and monitored the pressure. The water began to flow steadily. The plants perked up, leaves glistening in the sunlight. Alara felt a rush of pride. She had done it, not alone but with his help and the lessons he had taught her. The cowboy smiled, a faint twinkle in his eyes. You see, you already have what it takes. You only needed to trust yourself and the signs around you. Alara looked at him, amazed. I didn't think I could do it. You did, he said simply. Humans can adapt. Humans can solve problems. You will learn this more every day. As they continued to work, repairing other minor faults in the node, Alara began to notice something else. The cowboy had a way of teaching without talking too much. He pointed, gestured, or asked a single question, and her mind would start seeing solutions on its own. It was a different kind of learning, one that blended instinct, observation, and logic. By the end of the day, the node was fully operational again. Water flowed through the lines smoothly, sensors indicated normal function, and the nearby crops looked healthier than they had in weeks. The colony's future, for now, was safe. Alara sat back on a rock, exhausted but exhilarated. I can't believe we did it, she said. The cowboy shook his head slightly. You did it. I only helped you see what was already there. Humans have this strength even when they don't believe it. That is what makes you special. Alara thought about this. All her life she had relied on machines, data, and protocols. But here in the open plains, with the wind on her face and the strange plants all around, she realized that humans themselves were powerful. They could adapt, observe, and solve problems that machines could not. Thank you, she said softly, for trusting me, for teaching me. The cowboy tipped his hat, the faintest smile on his face. It is not about trusting you. It is about trusting what humans can do. Fear will only slow you. Curiosity and courage will carry you forward. Remember that. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they began the walk back to the colony. The sky turned pink and orange, the distant clouds swirling like the spiraling plants below. Alara noticed small details she hadn't before, the pattern of the rocks, the way the wind shifted, even the subtle sounds of distant water. You see, the cowboy said, his voice calm and steady, everything here speaks. You just need to listen. Alara nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. She realized that the land, the machines, and the humans who lived here were all connected. The cowboy had shown her a way to see that connection, to understand it, and to work with it. That night, as she wrote in her journal, Alara reflected on the day. She had faced a challenge she had once thought impossible. She had learned to trust herself, to observe the world, and to act with courage. And most importantly, she had learned that humans, herself included, were capable of more than she had ever imagined. The cowboy sat outside, watching the stars appear one by one in the clear night sky. He didn't speak much, but his presence was steady and reassuring. Alara realized that he had kept his promise, to show her that she had nothing to fear, and that she could face the unknown with confidence. In the quiet of the colony, with alien stars overhead and soft sounds of life around her, Alara felt a sense of possibility she had never felt before. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but now she knew that she could meet them. And she knew that, with the cowboy's guidance, humans could thrive on this distant, strange world, if only they observed, adapted, and believed in themselves. The night stretched on, calm and peaceful. Somewhere beyond the hills, the wind whispered through alien grass and rocks. And under the wide expanse of stars, a scientist and a cowboy rested, ready for the next day's adventure, knowing that humanity's ingenuity and courage could light even the darkest worlds. The next morning, the colony awoke under a soft pink and orange sky. Alara felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness as she stepped outside. Yesterday had been a success. The terraforming node was repaired, the crops were thriving, and she had begun to understand the strange ways the cowboy taught. But today promised a new challenge, one she could not yet imagine. The cowboy was already waiting at the edge of the colony, as he had been every morning, He leaned against a rock, arms crossed, hat tilted slightly to shield his eyes from the rising sun. When he saw Ilara, he gave a nod. "Good morning," he said. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Ilara hesitated. "Next? What do you mean?" He smiled faintly. "Problems rarely come alone. Today you will face a test, but it is not one of fear. It is one of observation, patience, and ingenuity. Are you ready to learn?" Ilara took a deep breath. I think so." Together, they began walking toward a distant hill where a series of smaller terraforming nodes had been installed. The colony depended on these nodes to maintain soil moisture and nutrient balance. But recent storms had caused malfunctions, and the nodes were not communicating properly. As they approached, Ilara noticed the first sign of trouble. The nearest node was covered in strange alien moss which seemed to grow quickly and unpredictably. Its panels flickered with faint light and the soil around it looked uneven. Ilara frowned. This is worse than I expected." The cowboy crouched to examine the moss. "Do not be alarmed. Everything has a solution if you look closely. Observe before you act. Sometimes the answer is in the pattern, not the machine." Ilara nodded, taking out her tablet and beginning to document the situation. She watched how the moss grew, noting the direction and spacing of its tendrils. The cowboy pointed to subtle dips in the soil, showing her how water had been rerouted naturally over time. "You see," he asked, "the land adapts, the moss adapts. Humans must learn to adapt too. Force cannot solve everything. Understanding can." Ilara felt a spark of determination. She knelt beside the node and studied the panels, circuits, and sensors. She realized that the failure was not just mechanical, it was environmental. The storm had shifted soil and water flow, causing sensors to misread and panels to malfunction. "How do we fix it?" she asked quietly. The cowboy gestured toward the moss. "Work with it, not against it. Observe its growth, understand where it blocks the flow, and you will find a path. Humans often try to control, but sometimes control is not the answer. Cooperation is." Ilara studied the moss, noting gaps and patterns in its spread. She began rerouting water flow through alternative channels, using temporary tubes and sensors she had carried. The cowboy stood nearby, offering gentle guidance but never taking control. He encouraged her to think, not follow instructions blindly. Hours passed as Ilara worked. The sun climbed higher, casting harsh light on the hill, but she didn't notice. She was absorbed in observation, calculation, and adjustment. Slowly, the node began to respond. Water pressure stabilized, sensors indicated normal readings, and the moss began to shift harmlessly to the sides, guided by her adjustments. The cowboy nodded approvingly. "See, you are learning. Humans can solve complex problems when they observe and think, not just react. That is what makes you strong." Ilara smiled, exhausted but exhilarated. "I didn't think I could do it. Alone, I couldn't have done it alone." "You did it," he said gently. "I only guided your eyes. The strength was always yours." As they moved to the next node, the challenge grew more complex. This node had partially collapsed during the storm, and its sensors were buried under layers of soil. The water lines were misaligned, and nearby plants had begun to wilt from lack of moisture. Ilara felt a pang of worry. "This seems impossible," she whispered. "Impossible is only a word," the cowboy said. "Break it down, study the signs, use what you know. Humans are problem solvers. That is what sets you apart." Ilara knelt beside the collapsed node and began to examine it carefully. She noted the slope of the soil, the way water had pooled, and the subtle patterns in plant growth. Slowly, a plan formed in her mind. She would dig carefully, redirect the water temporarily, and then align the node's sensors to match the natural flow. The cowboy watched silently, stepping in only to point out subtle angles or shifts she might have missed. Ilara followed his guidance, learning to trust both her own intuition and the knowledge he had shared. It took hours, but the node gradually came back to life. Water flowed steadily, plants perked up, and sensors indicated stable operation. Alara stood, brushing dirt from her hands, and felt a rush of accomplishment. "You did it," the cowboy said, smiling. "Humans are capable of more than they believe. Fear often hides strength. You see it now, don't you?" Alara nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride. "I see it. I can do this. I can solve problems, adapt. I can help the colony survive here." The cowboy's eyes gleamed faintly in the sunlight. "Exactly. And that is only the beginning. Every challenge you face will teach you more. Humans do not give up. You will find solutions where others see only failure. That is what makes humanity remarkable." They continued to the final node of the day. This one was the trickiest. Part of it was buried under rocks that had shifted during the storm, and the water flow was inconsistent. Alara paused, feeling the weight of responsibility. "Don't worry," the cowboy said. "Look first, understand second, then act. Panic will cloud your judgment. Observation will reveal the way." Alara knelt, examining the rocks, soil, and water. She noticed small patterns, the way the water pooled in certain areas, the direction the moss leaned, and the shape of the rocks that blocked flow. Slowly, she devised a strategy. Using small levers, temporary channels, and careful adjustment, she began to realign the node. The cowboy watched, occasionally pointing out subtle shifts or reminding her to adjust angles. Alara felt a rhythm forming between her observation and her actions. She felt connected to the land, to the machinery, and to the cowboy's quiet guidance. Hours later, the final node stabilized. Water flowed evenly, sensors blinked normally, and nearby plants perked up. Alara stood back, breathing heavily but smiling. She had done it. Every challenge had been met, every problem solved. And she had learned something deeper, that humans could thrive in this harsh, alien world by combining observation, ingenuity, and courage. The cowboy approached, tipping his hat. "You have passed today's test, not by luck but by learning, observing, and acting. Humans can adapt, survive, and improve any situation. Remember this lesson well." Alara nodded, feeling a sense of pride and wonder. "I understand now. Humans, we can do amazing things if we trust ourselves." He smiled. "Yes, and with each challenge you will grow stronger. Remember, fear is only useful if it teaches you, but knowledge, courage, and observation, they will always carry you forward." As the sun began to set, they walked back toward the colony. The sky glowed with shades of orange and purple, and the distant stars began to twinkle faintly. Alara noticed details she hadn't before, the pattern of the rocks, the movement of the wind, the quiet hum of life around her. "You see," the cowboy said quietly. "The world is full of patterns, signs, and lessons. Humans just need to open their eyes." Alara smiled. "I am beginning to see it. I really am." That night she wrote in her journal, documenting every lesson, every observation, and every small victory. She realized that the day's tests were not just about machines or water. They were about humans themselves. They were about patience, courage, and the ability to solve problems through thought, observation, and cooperation. As the stars spread across the sky, Alara felt a deep sense of possibility. She had faced challenges she once thought impossible, and she had succeeded. With the cowboy's guidance, she had discovered the true strength of humanity, the ability to adapt, observe, and act with courage. Somewhere in the quiet hills beyond the colony, the wind whispered through alien grass and rocks. Under the wide expanse of stars, a scientist and a cowboy rested, ready for the next challenge, confident in the power of human ingenuity, patience, and courage. And for the first time, Alara realized that the unknown was not something to fear. It was something to understand, embrace, and learn from. Humanity could face any challenge, no matter how strange or difficult, and emerge stronger. The morning arrived quietly, with pale light spilling across the colony and stretching toward the distant plains. Alara awoke with a sense of purpose that she had never felt before. After the challenges of the past 2 days, She had grown in ways she could hardly describe. The cowboy had taught her not only to solve problems, but also to see the world differently, to notice patterns and connections that many overlooked. She packed her tools carefully, her mind buzzing with thoughts. Today, the cowboy had promised to show her something extraordinary, something that might explain his unusual wisdom and experience. Alara had no idea what to expect, but curiosity propelled her forward. The cowboy was waiting at the edge of the colony as he always was. He leaned against a rock, his hat shading his face from the rising sun. When he saw her, he nodded. "Are you ready for today?" he asked. Alara smiled. "I think so. What are we doing?" "Today, you will see why humans can adapt to any world," he said. "And you will learn how we can thrive, not just survive. But you must observe carefully. Everything has meaning." They began walking toward a distant canyon, its edges lined with unusual rock formations that glimmered faintly in the morning light. Alara noticed strange patterns etched into the rocks, spirals and curves that reminded her of the alien plants she had studied. The cowboy walked silently beside her, his eyes scanning the terrain as if reading a book written in stone and soil. "Why do you study everything so closely?" Alara asked. "The plants, the rocks, even the wind." "Because the land tells a story," the cowboy replied. "Everything here is connected. Humans often ignore these stories. We rely too much on machines, too much on instructions. But observation, patience, and understanding reveal the truth. Patterns exist everywhere if you look." Alara nodded, beginning to notice details she had missed before. Small depressions in the soil indicated where water had flowed, subtle curves in the rocks suggested ancient erosion patterns, and the alien plants leaned toward hidden sources of moisture. She began to understand that the world itself was a teacher, and the cowboy was guiding her to read its lessons. After a long walk, they reached a hidden valley at the canyon's base. The valley was alive with strange vegetation, and small streams of clear water meandered through the rocks. But what caught Ilara's attention most was the structure at the center, a series of terraces carved into the stone, filled with plants, soil, and water channels. It looked almost like an ancient garden, carefully designed and perfectly balanced with the surrounding landscape. "This is incredible," Alara whispered. "Did humans build this?" The cowboy shook his head. "Not exactly. Humans discovered it long ago, but few understood it. The first settlers here learned to work with the land, not against it. They observed, adapted, and thrived. This is an example of what humans can do when they respect nature and combine it with their ingenuity." Alara stepped closer, studying the terraces. She noticed how water flowed naturally from one level to the next, nourishing each plant. The arrangement of the soil and rocks allowed maximum sunlight and minimized erosion. Every detail was intentional, yet perfectly in harmony with the natural environment. "Who made this?" she asked, fascinated. "Humans," the cowboy said simply, "but not by brute force or domination, by observation, creativity, and cooperation. This is what I want you to understand. Humans are capable of incredible things when they work with the world, not against it." Alara walked along the terraces, touching the plants, feeling the soil, and watching the water flow. She realized that this hidden garden was a perfect model of sustainable living. It was not just a technical achievement, it was a lesson in patience, balance, and ingenuity. "I never knew humans could do this," she said quietly. "It's beautiful." The cowboy smiled faintly. "Beauty comes from understanding. Humans are not just survivors. We are thinkers, observers, creators. This valley proves it." They spent the morning exploring the terraces. The cowboy pointed out small details, how certain plants supported each other, how water channels could be adjusted without damaging the ecosystem, and how soil could be enriched naturally. Alara listened carefully, taking notes and making sketches. Each lesson felt like a key unlocking a new way of thinking. "Everything is connected," she said finally. The plants, the water, the soil, even the rocks. It's like a system. Exactly, the cowboy said. And humans can understand systems. That is our strength. Machines can follow instructions, but they cannot adapt or innovate. Humans can. As they rested for a short break, Alara looked at the cowboy. You seem to know all of this already. How did you learn? He leaned back, eyes scanning the valley. I did not learn everything at once. I observed, experimented, and listened. I watched how humans survived here, how we adapted, and how we could thrive. Experience teaches what books cannot. Observation teaches what instructions cannot. That is why I can guide you. Alara thought about the lessons of the past days, the nodes, the soil, the water, and the plants. She realized that every challenge had been preparing her for this moment, teaching her to see connections, patterns, and solutions. Suddenly, a small movement caught her eye. A cluster of alien plants shifted slightly, revealing a hidden water source beneath them. The water sparkled in the sunlight, perfectly clear and abundant. Alara gasped. "Look, there's water here," the cowboy nodded. "Yes, the land provides if you know where to look." Humans must learn to notice these gifts. That is the key to thriving. Alara knelt beside the water, examining the surrounding plants. She noticed how the roots absorbed moisture efficiently, how leaves channeled dew toward the soil, and how small rocks guided water naturally. It was a lesson in balance and adaptation, one she had never imagined. "I understand now," she said softly. This is why humans can thrive anywhere. If we observe, learn, and respect the land, we can survive and even flourish." The cowboy smiled. "Yes. And this is only the beginning. Humans are capable of more than we know. Every challenge, every unknown is an opportunity to grow. You are learning what it means to be human in a new world." They spent the rest of the day exploring the valley, documenting the terraces, water flow, and plant arrangements. Alara realized that the knowledge she was gaining here was not just for her experiments. It could benefit the entire colony. She could teach others to observe, adapt, and thrive, just as the cowboy had taught her. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the valley, Alara felt a deep sense of clarity. She had faced challenges, learned to trust herself, and now understood the deeper lesson of the cowboy's guidance. Humans were not just survivors, but innovators and problem solvers. "This valley, it's a model," she said quietly. "We could use these ideas for the whole colony. Imagine what humans could do if we worked like this everywhere." The cowboy nodded. "Exactly, and that is why I brought you here, to see the potential, to understand the connection between humans and the land. You have learned quickly, Alara. Remember these lessons well. They will guide you and others through every challenge you face." As they began the long walk back to the colony, the sky turned shades of pink and purple, and distant stars began to twinkle faintly. Alara walked beside the cowboy, her mind buzzing with ideas and possibilities. She realized that this day had changed her understanding of humans, of the planet, and of what was possible. "You've shown me so much," she said quietly. "I feel different. I see the land differently now. I see humans differently, and I want to share this with everyone." The cowboy smiled. "That is the true lesson. Knowledge is not just for one person. Humans grow when we share what we learn, and the more we observe, adapt, and innovate, the stronger we become." That night, under the vast expanse of alien stars, Alara wrote in her journal. She documented the valley, the terraces, and the lessons she had learned. She realized that the cowboy's guidance had given her more than knowledge, it had given her vision. She could see how humans could thrive in harmony with the world, not by force, but by understanding and ingenuity. Somewhere beyond the hills, the wind whispered through alien grass and rocks. Under the wide sky, a scientist and a cowboy rested, reflecting on the lessons of the day. Alara understood that the real test was not in fixing nodes or moving water. It was in understanding, adapting, and sharing the knowledge that could help humanity flourish. And deep inside, she knew that the cowboy had shown her the most important truth. Humans were not limited by fear, machines, or even the unknown. Their greatest power was curiosity, observation, and the ability to learn and innovate. As they walked back to the colony, the stars glowing softly above them, Alara felt a profound sense of hope. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was full of possibilities. And with guidance, courage, and the spirit of humanity, she knew they could thrive in this new world, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The colony woke to a morning filled with promise. Soft sunlight filtered through the translucent domes, casting warm patterns across the walkways and gardens. Alara stepped outside, her heart light with anticipation. The past few days had been filled with lessons, discoveries, and challenges, and she could feel the colony shifting around her. Humans had begun to adapt in ways that mirrored the cowboys' quiet teachings, through observation, patience, and ingenuity. The cowboy was waiting as always, leaning against a rock at the edge of the settlement. He tipped his hat at her as she approached, the familiar calm in his presence reassuring. "Good morning," he said. "Are you ready to see the results of your work?" Alara smiled, a mix of excitement and curiosity in her eyes. "I think so. I hope what we've done makes a difference." "It will," the cowboy said simply. "Humans always notice when others succeed, and when one person learns, others can follow. That is how progress spreads." They walked together toward the edge of the colony where the repaired nodes and irrigation systems had been installed. Already, small changes were visible. Plants stood taller, their leaves glistening in the morning dew. Streams of water flowed evenly through carefully guided channels, nourishing the soil and ensuring that nothing went to waste. Alara's heart lifted as she saw the thriving plants. "Look at this," she whispered. "Everything is alive, growing. The colony is really changing." The cowboy nodded, scanning the land. "Yes, and it is not just the machines or the water that make it work. It is humans observing, adapting, and learning. That is the real change." As they continued walking, they came across settlers tending their gardens. A few children played near the edges of the streams, laughing as they dipped their hands into the water. The colony had begun to feel alive in a new way, humans, plants, and water systems working together in harmony. Alara stopped for a moment, taking it all in. "I never imagined humans could do this on a planet so far from Earth," she said. "I thought we'd only survive, barely keeping things alive. But now we're thriving." "That is the difference," the cowboy said quietly. "Humans are capable of more than survival. We are problem solvers, thinkers, innovators. We can grow, even in a world that seems impossible at first." Alara felt a deep sense of pride. The past days of hard work, observation, and learning had built something far greater than she had imagined. The lessons the cowboy had taught her were not just about terraforming nodes or irrigation. They were about humanity's ability to adapt, grow, and thrive in harmony with the world around them. They continued their walk toward the valley they had discovered earlier, the hidden terraces that served as a model for sustainable living. The sun was higher now, casting bright light across the carefully arranged plants and water channels. Alara paused at the edge, looking out over the valley. "It's perfect," she said softly. "It's a whole ecosystem working together." The cowboy nodded. "And humans can build more like this if they observe, listen, and learn. That is the promise I made to you. You said you were afraid, and I promised you nothing would harm you while I guided you. But more than that, I promised to show you that humans could face the unknown without fear. Today, you see that promise fulfilled." Alara smiled, feeling the weight of his words. She thought back to the first day, when she had admitted her fear. How far she had come since then. She had faced broken nodes, shifting soil, and strange plants, and she had learned to trust herself and her observations. And now, standing here, she understood that humans were not limited by fear or by the unknown. As they explored the valley, Alara noticed settlers arriving, curious about the hidden garden and the thriving water channels. The cowboy guided her to speak to them, showing them how to observe patterns, redirect water, and work with the land rather than against it. Alara demonstrated simple techniques: how to place plants to maximize sunlight, how to use natural slopes for irrigation, and how to notice the subtle signs of soil health. The settlers watched eagerly, asking questions and trying the methods themselves. Children helped move small stones, adults adjusted water channels, and the land began to respond immediately. Plants leaned toward the new water flow, soil absorbed the moisture efficiently, and small streams found their way naturally. Alara felt a deep satisfaction. The knowledge she had gained from the cowboy was spreading, helping the colony thrive. It was not just her achievement, it was humanity's achievement. They were learning, adapting, and growing stronger together. As the day progressed, the cowboy walked beside her, his eyes scanning the horizon. He occasionally offered advice, reminding settlers to observe, be patient, and think carefully. But most of the work was now in human hands, guided by the lessons they had learned. Alara paused for a moment, watching a group of children play near the streams. One of them noticed a small pattern in the rocks and soil, pointing it out to an adult who adjusted a water channel accordingly. She realized that the cowboy had taught her well, not just to solve problems herself, but to teach others to observe, adapt, and innovate. "You've done more than fix nodes," the cowboy said quietly, reading her thoughts. "You've inspired humans to see what they are capable of." "That is the true success," Alara smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you. Your guidance, it changed everything." He tipped his hat slightly. "The guidance was only a spark. The fire came from within you, from humans themselves. Fear does not hold you back when knowledge and courage take its place. Remember this." The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley. The settlers paused, taking in the sight of their thriving crops, flowing water, and the carefully arranged terraces. Alara stood beside the cowboy, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. This is what I wanted to see," she said. "Humans thriving, not just surviving, working with the land, learning from it, growing together." "And now you have," he said quietly. "You understand the promise. Fear is only a barrier when humans allow it to be. Knowledge, observation, and courage can overcome anything. That is the legacy you can carry forward." Alara thought of the first day she had met him, the moment she had admitted her fear. She remembered his calm reassurance, his promise to show her that humans could face the unknown without fear. Now, that promise had been fulfilled. She had grown, and so had the colony. Humans were thriving on this alien world, not because of machines or instructions alone, but because of their own ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. As darkness fell, stars twinkling across the sky, the settlers gathered in the valley to celebrate their progress. There was no loud cheering, no fanfare, just quiet admiration, smiles, and the satisfaction of achievement. The children ran along the water channels, learning by doing. Adults worked together to adjust soil and water flow, sharing knowledge and ideas. The colony had become a community of learners and innovators, guided by observation and human ingenuity. Alara stood at the edge of the valley, looking out at the thriving settlement. She felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of pride, hope, and gratitude. The cowboy had kept his promise, not only to protect her but to show her the true potential of humans. "You've changed my life," she said quietly, speaking to him as much as to herself. He nodded. "And you will change the colony. Knowledge spreads, Alara. Inspiration spreads. Humans grow when they learn together. That is why I walked beside you." For a long moment they stood in silence, watching the stars reflect on the water, the gentle rustle of plants in the evening breeze, and the soft hum of life in the valley. The colony had grown, humans had learned, and the lessons of observation, courage, and ingenuity had taken root. Alara realized that the cowboy had not just taught her to solve problems. He had taught her to see the world differently. Humans could thrive anywhere if they learned to observe, adapt, and respect the land. Fear no longer held her back. Instead, curiosity and courage guided her. The night settled quietly over the valley. The stars sparkled, the water flowed gently, and the settlers rested after a day of learning and growth. Alara and the cowboy walked back toward the colony, their steps light and steady. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Humans will face more challenges, strange worlds, and new problems. But now you know the truth. Fear is not the enemy. Understanding is, observation is, and courage is the spark that lights the way." Alara nodded, smiling. "I understand now, and I will share it with everyone." He gave a faint smile, tipping his hat one last time. "Then the promise is truly fulfilled. Humans will thrive because they can learn, adapt, and innovate. That is the power I wanted you to see." As they approached the colony, the lights of the settlement glimmered softly, reflecting the promise of the future. Alara knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, and new opportunities. But she was ready. The cowboy had shown her that humans, with curiosity, observation, and courage, could face the unknown, and not just survive but flourish. Under the vast sky filled with stars, Alara felt a deep sense of hope. Humanity had taken the first steps on this new world, guided by wisdom, ingenuity, and the quiet power of learning. And with the cowboy's promise fulfilled, she knew that the future was bright, not because of technology alone, but because of the human spirit, capable of thriving anywhere it chose to go. Alara looked at him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Thank you for everything." The cowboy nodded, a gentle smile on his weathered face. "It is only the beginning. Humans will take it further than I could imagine. That is the true promise." And so, under the endless sky of a distant world, a scientist and a cowboy watched over the colony. Humans were thriving, learning, and growing. Fear had been replaced with courage. Uncertainty had been replaced with knowledge. And the promise that had started with a single step back, a single moment of understanding, had changed everything. The stars sparkled overhead. The colony thrived below. And humanity, guided by observation, ingenuity, and heart, was ready for whatever the universe would bring next.